Hey there friends, Rebecca the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and I'm here with my final video about the best books of 2021. So we talked about the top 5 that I thought should be included in that list. We talked about some runners-up. Now lastly, I really want to talk about actually my favorite genre, which is speculative fiction, which includes fantasy and science fiction. So I wanted to talk about that separately because it's my favorite, like I said, and I read a lot of those books this year, so much so that I thought that they deserved their own category. It's hard to compete. I would never have been able to pick top 5 books of just fiction and speculative fiction all mixed up together. It would have been impossible. Impossible. So I'm making a separate video here to show you guys some of the really great science fiction and fantasy that came out last year. That not necessarily came out last year, but that I read last year and that I really loved. I think actually most of it did come out last year, though, now that I'm looking at which ones I picked. But they're phenomenal. If you love fantasy, if you love science fiction, you should definitely give them a try. And even if you don't, maybe these are ones you want to try to get you started to read something new. You don't know, you might find something that you really absolutely love. So I'm cheating for the first one, for number 5. I'm already starting this off by cheating because I'm including 2 books as my number 5 pick, and that is because they're part of a series. Books 1 and books 2 in the Bone Shard Daughter series. So this is going to be a trilogy. This book came out at the end of 2020, and this book came out near the end of 2021. And the third and final book will be out sometime in this year, I believe, September or October. This is one of the most unique fantasy series that I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. First, I want to just show you how intricate and beautiful this cover is. There is also a wonderful map in the beginning of it, and I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I am the biggest sucker for a well-drawn map in a fantasy book. I love it. So as you can tell, this is definitely a Asian-based fantasy series, which is absolutely fantastic. And what I love about it, like I said, is that it's a very unique story. So it's basically told from 3 different points of view. There is the Emperor's daughter, who is growing up in the palace, and she's very confused about a lot of different things going on in her life. It's also about this merchant who turns into this marauder, who turns into this hero for the people. And it's also about this, the daughter of a diplomat on one of the islands in the Empire. And it's all about how these stories connect. And the thing that's really cool about it is the fantasy system in this, the magic system, is really, really cool. It's bone shard magic. So basically, the people in the Empire, the Emperor's family, can manipulate bones. So they can manipulate bones to turn them into these constructs. Like they can animate these animals and creatures out of bones from other people. So everybody in the Empire has to tithe a piece of their skull, little tiny shard that the Empire can then use to create these creatures. It's really interesting, fascinating story. I loved it so much. It hooked me right away. From somebody that reads a lot of epic fantasy, this series really stands out. So I highly recommend it. And like I said, the first 2 books are out, and the third one is on the horizon, so you don't have to worry about a really long time in between books. I'm looking at you, George R. Martin, and Game of Thrones. So it's phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend it. The first book is The Bone Shard Daughter, and the second book is The Bone Shard Emperor. I did know the name of the third one, but I've forgotten it at this time. But I'm sure it's going to be amazing as well. Okay, next is a science fiction book. A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. Now, this is a lot different than what we just talked about because, as you can see, the length of it is much different. So this is a very short book, and it stole my heart in every single way that possibly can be talked about. If you've never read anything by Becky Chambers before, she is a fantastic science fiction writer. Her books, and I think it says it on here, it doesn't, but I read a review where somebody said it feels like a warm hug, and that is the most accurate description I can give of this book. It is a warm hug of a book. It's very short. It will not take you a long time to read it. So if you're just looking for something to dip your toes into the science fiction world, this might be a good place to start. And it's set in the future, in this world where robots existed but then went off into nature, and then nobody has heard about them again. And it's about this T-monk who actually becomes friends with this robot who comes back, and it's about their friendship. But this is not an exciting book. It's not a intense book. There's not a lot of action happening in it. It is a beautiful, peaceful story. Highly recommend it. Love it so, so, so much. A Psalm for the Wild Bill. Switching gears again now into going into a historical fantasy, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Oh my gosh, this book was getting so much hype when it first came out. I knew I was going to love it, but I did not expect to love it as much as I did. So She Who Became the Sun, it's a very interesting play on words, because sun could really be, although it's spelled S-U-N, it could also really be read as sun, S-O-N as well. Because this is the story of a girl who is born into poverty, grown up into poverty. It's another Asian-based fantasy story, and basically women and sisters don't have any agency in this world. And basically what they have to do is fend for themselves and hope that a man is going to take care of them. Well, when the main character in this book, her brother dies. Her brother had this really good fortune read for him when he was young, that he was going to live this prosperous life. It was going to be amazing. And the sister, who is the main character, her prophecy for her life was that she was going to be zero, nothing. So she thinks that her life is not going to be, it's going to be meaningless. Well, then the brother dies unexpectedly of illness. So she has a decision to make, and that is to continue on with what she's been told she's meant to do, which is basically nothing, or she can steal her brother's identity, pretend to be him, take his name, and seize for herself that great destiny that was given to him. Obviously, you can guess what she did, or this would have been a short, boring book, right? So this book is about her rising up and just grabbing power and agency for herself, and it's so amazing. I loved every second of this book. Loved it so, so much. I highly, highly recommend it. She Who Became the Sun. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Switching gears again, we've got another fantasy, but this time this is a very dark fantasy. And it's a very long book, so I don't want you to be put off by that. Yes, I know, it's over 700 pages, but it's called Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. Now, when I say it's a dark fantasy, I don't know if that's an official subgenre of fantasy. I think it might be, but it usually categorizes a book that has one or more of these things, which is a lot of violence, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of cursing, right? So the F word is in this book quite a lot. And it's set in a world that's either a dystopian or apocalyptic that doesn't have a lot of hope. There's not a lot of hope in this world. And that basically this book fits all those categories. So I am like the most positive, happy person in the world. So for me to say that I loved this book, this dark, gritty book, it's so good. I've read, I think, everything else that J. Kristoff has ever written. I'm trying to make sure I say that and it's not a lie. Yeah, I've read everything he's written and I've loved it. This is a masterpiece. Mwah. A masterpiece of a book. I'm not even lying. This book is so good. It's told in a really wonky timeline, which is really cool. So the book starts in the beginning. Our main character has been captured by vampires. So let me set the world up. Sorry. It's apocalyptic. Vampires have taken over. The sun is dead. And there are humans trying to basically survive. So there are these half vampires, which is what our main character is, who fight against the vampires to try to win the humans back some sort of life, right, in this crazy dark world. So the story starts with our main character who is captured by vampires. He's in this tower. He's already captured. The story starts out. And a vampire chronicler comes in to interview him because he wants to get his life story, because this is... Our main character here is one of the most notorious vampire killers and hunters that they've ever known. And he wants to know his life story. So that's where this story starts, with him telling his story to this chronicler. And it's going to be part of a series. I don't know how many books, at least 2. And I know that Kristoff is working on the second one. And it's so good. This book is so well written. Yes, it is over 700 pages, but not once did I feel like it was a slog or that I was trying to race to get through it so I could finish. Never felt like that. It was phenomenal the whole time. Really great book. Give it a shot. I promise you're going to love it. It's so good. Empire of the Vampire. Okay. Another book that I absolutely love. This one is actually my #1 favorite. Speculative fiction. So that is fantasy and sci-fi, right? #1 book in that category of this year, or of 2021 rather. Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. Rika Aoki. This is another book that feels like such a warm hug. I love it so much. There's a couple different stories going on at the same time here. So you've got this sort of Faust-like main character who has sold her soul to the devil, and to get it back, she has to then give this demon 7 different souls of violinists. So she is a violin teacher. She's renowned the world over. And she feeds the souls of her students to this demon in order to save her own soul. So you've got that story. You've got the second storyline of this young trans girl violinist who has just ran away from home because it's not safe for her. And she is trying to make her way in the world. She comes across this violin teacher. Third story. These are all going to connect. Obviously, you can see where the first two how, but the third one is crazy. The third story that is going to interconnect with these two is a alien family who has escaped an intergalactic war, who is now living on Earth in disguise, and they are running a donut shop. Yes, a donut shop. These stories all combine to make one of the best, most feel-good science fiction stories I have ever read. It's going to make you want to eat donuts. So maybe have something sweet with you if you're going to read this one. But it's so good. The story is phenomenal. The writing is phenomenal. Such an emotional, beautiful book. I loved every page of it. And I wish I could reread it again for the first time because it was so good. Light from Other Stars. Well, that's what we've got for you guys today. The top 5 best speculative fiction books that I read in 2021. I hope that they sound interesting to you. If you're a longtime fan of the genre, maybe you'll find something new to read that you haven't before. Or if you're not a fan of the genre and you want to try something new this year, give one of these books a shot. They're the top of their game, the top of the genre, I think, and definitely worth a second glance. So thank you so much for watching, friends. Please give this video a like. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day.